street. I'm as sane as you be. A damn sight saner, because no man with a normal brain could ignore getting a rifle stock broke over his skull like you done." Whereupon he tries to kick me between the eyes and otherwise give evidence of what I once heard a doctor call his derangement. It was a pitiful sight to see, especially since he was a cousin to Miss Sue Pritchard and would undoubtedly be my cousin-in-law one of these days. He jerked and wrastled, and some of his words was downright shocking. But I didn't pay no attention to his ravings. I always heard the way to get along with crazy people was to humor 'em. I was afeared if I left him laying on the ground the wolves might chaw him, so I tied him up in the crotch of a big tree where they couldn't reach him. I likewise tied his hoss by the pool where he could drink and graze. "Listen," Jack begged as I clumb on to Captain Kidd. "I give up. Untie me and I'll spill the beans. I'll tell you everything." "You just take it easy," I soothed. "I'll be back soon." "Expletive deleted," says he, frothing slightly at the mouth. With a sigh of pity I turned up the gulch, and his language, till I was clean out of sight, ain't to be repeated. A mile or so on I come to the white oak tree and clumb out of the gulch and went up a long slope till I seen a jut of rock like a chimney rising above the trees. I slid off of Captain Kidd and drawed my pistols and snuck forward through the thick brush till I seen the mouth of a cave ahead of me, and I also seen something else too. A man was lying in front of it with his head in a pool of blood. I rolled him over, and he was still alive. His sculp was cut open, but the bone didn't seem to be caved in. He was a lanky old coot with reddish gray whiskers, and he didn't have but 3 fingers onto his left hand. There was a pack tore up and scattered on the ground nigh him, but I reckon the pack mule had run off. They was also hoss tracks leading west. They was a spring nearby, and I brung my hat full of water and sloshed it into his face and tried to pour some into his mouth, but it warn't no go. When I throwed the water over him he kind of twitched and groaned, but when I tried to pour the water down his gullet he kind of instinctively clamped his jaws together like a bulldog. Then I seen a jug setting in the cave, so I brung it out and pulled out the cork. When it popped, he opened his mouth convulsively and reached out his hand. So I poured a pint or 2 down his gullet, and he opened his eyes and glared wildly around till he seen his busted pack. Then he clutched his whiskers and shrieked, "They got it! My polka dust! I've been hiding up here for weeks, and just when I was gonna make a jump for it, they finds me." "Who?" I asked. "Buck Ridgway and his gang," he squalled. "I was keerless. When I heard hosses I thought it was the men which was coming to help me take my gold out. Next thing I knowed, Ridgway's bunch had run out of the brush and was beating me over the head with their colts. I'm a ruined man." "Hell's fire!" quoth I with passion. "Them Ridgways was beginning to get onto my nerves." I left old man Clements howling his woes to the sky like a timber wolf with the bellyache, and I forked Captain Kidd and headed west. They'd left a trail the youngest kid on Bear Creek could foller. It led for 5 miles through as wild a country as I ever seen outside the Humboldts. Then I seen a cabin ahead on a wide benchland, and that backed agin a steep mountain slope. I could just see the chimney through the tops of a dense thicket. It warn't long till sundown, and smoke was coming out of the chimney. I knowed it must be the Ridgway hideout, so I went busting through the thicket in such a hurry I forgot they might have a man on the lookout. I'm powerful absent-minded that way. They was one all right, but I was coming so fast he missed me with his buffalo gun, and he didn't stop to reload, but run into the cabin yelling, "Bar the door quick! Here comes the biggest man in the world on the biggest hoss in creation!" They done so. When I emerged from amongst the trees, they opened up on me through the loopholes with sawed-off shotguns. If it'd been Winchesters, I'd have ignored 'em, but even I'm a little bashful about buckshot at close range when 6 men is shooting at me all at once. So I retired behind a big tree and begun to shoot back with my pistols, and the howls of them worthless critters when my bullets knocked splinters in their faces was music to my ears. They was a corral some distance behind the cabin with 6 hosses in it. To my surprise, I seen one of 'em was a bobtailed roan the feller was riding which I seen talking with Sue Pritchard and Jack Montgomery, and I wondered if them blame outlaws had captured him. But I warn't accomplishing much shooting at them loopholes, and the sun dipped lower, and I begun to get mad. I decided to rush the cabin anyway, and to hell with their derned buckshot, and I dismounted and stumped my toe right severe on a rock. It always did madden me to stump my toe, and I uttered some loud and profane remarks, and I reckon them scoundrels must have thunk I'd stopped some lead, the way they whooped. But just then I had an inspiration. A big thick smoke was pouring out of the rock chimney, so I knowed they was a big fire on the fireplace where they was cooking supper. And I was sure there weren't but one door in the cabin. So I taken up the rock, which was about the size of an ordinary pig, and throwed it at the chimney. Boys on Bear Creek is ashamed if they have to use more'n one rock on a squirrel in a 100-foot tree across the creek, and I didn't miss. I hit her center, and she buckled and come crashing down in a regular shower of rocks, and most of 'em fell down into the fireplace, as I knowed by the way the sparks flew. I judged that the coals was scattered all over the floor, and the chimney hole was blocked so the smoke couldn't get out that way. Anyway, the smoke began to pour out the winders, and the Ridgewayers stopped shooting and started hollering. Somebody yelled, "The floor's on fire! Throw that bucket of water on it!" And someone else shrieked, "Wait, you damn fool! That ain't water, it's whiskey!" But he was too late. I heard the splash, and then a most amazing flame sprung up and licked out of the winders, and the fellers hollered louder'n ever and yelled, "Let me out! I got smoke in my eyes! I'm choking to death!" I left the thicket and run to the door just as a man throwed it open and staggered out, blind as a bat and cussing and shooting wild. I was afeared he'd hurt himself if he kept tearing around like that, so I taken his shotgun away from him and bent the barrel over his head to kind of keep him quiet. Then I seen to my surprise he was the feller which rode the bobtail roan. I thunk how surprised Sue'd be to know a friend of hern was a cussed outlaw. I then went into the cabin, which was so full of smoke and gunpowder fumes a man couldn't hardly see nothing. The walls and roof was on fire by now, and them idiots was tearing around with their eyes full of smoke, trying to find the door, and one of 'em run head on into the wall and knocked himself stiff. I throwed him outside and got hold of another to lead him out, and he cut me across the bosom with his bowie. I was so stung by this ingratitude that when I tossed him out to safety I maybe throwed him further'n I aimed to, and it appears they was a stump which he hit his head on. But I couldn't help it being there. I then turned around and located the remaining 3, which was fighting with each other, evidently thinking they was fighting me. Just as I started for 'em, a big log fell out of the roof and knocked 2 of 'em groggy and sot their clothes on fire, and a regular sheet of flame sprung up and burnt off most of my hair, and whilst I was dazzled by it the surviving outlaw run past me out the door, leaving his smoking shirt in my hand. Well, I dragged the other 2 out and stomped on 'em to put out the fire, and the way they hollered you'd have thought I was injuring 'em instead of saving their fool lives. "Shet up and tell me where the gold is," I ordered, and one of 'em gurgled, Ridgway's gone!"